Thank you, thank you. Good afternoon. How is everybody? It's good to see y'all here. This is every Pantera fan no, it's probably not all of you, but appreciate you guys being here. Good showing tonight. And it's nice to see my special ladies down here on the front row. Tell Robert I said happy birthday. And we're going to talk about Pantera this afternoon. This first episode, we're going to start with side A, and then we're going to do side B later on. But let me introduce the men that are really going to be the interesting part of the afternoon, hopefully. Sterling Winfield and Tim Kimsey, come on up. Y'all can take those off if you want. You don't have to stand wherever you're comfortable. All right. Hey, everybody. Well, good afternoon, guys.
How's it going?
It's going good, going good.
I'm actually kind of...
Is this on?
All right.
I always wanted to win a Grammy just so I could walk up and go, is this on? And blow into it.
Right, that'd be awesome.
Well, we're going to talk about this record I hear y'all had something to do with.
A small part.
I don't remember any of it.
Well, you remember parts, and I've heard about parts, so... Let's start off with you telling us what were your roles on this record. Tim, start with you.
Well, I have to say it wasn't just me. Sterling and I both were paired up by Russell Whitaker, and apparently we were the best candidates for this particular project that was about to be taken on.
He got that one right.
Yeah.
Because we could stay up past 9 p.m.
Right.
And did.
Well, we were all living on the vampire side of the night
Boy,
back then.
Yep, rock and roll.
Well, how did it come about that Pantera came to Sound Lab at the time?
I'm going to let you feel that one.
They were finishing up, they were in the middle of recording the basic tracks for the album in Nashville at their dad's place, Jerry Abbott, at his place called Abtracks in Nashville. And then they just got to a point where they kind of wanted to get out from under that whole scene there in Nashville, and they were wanting to come back home. And so they started making phone calls. Terry, their producer, Terry Date, who I really wish could be a part of this conversation too, but
absolutely,
he's off busy doing other things. But he was making phone calls looking for a room with an SSL in it here in town, and one of the only rooms was Russell's over there at Dallas Sound Lab.
The only one at the time.
Yeah,
for sure.
at the time, yeah. I mean, that was a big staple of recording at that point in time in rock and roll. And so yeah, they were calling around, and I was back there rolling cables or something one day and answered the call and talked to Terry for about 5 minutes, and next thing I knew, they were there around October '93.
Cool. Well, there are probably at least 5 or 6 people to be interested in this next little part. So let's ask some technical questions about it.
Uh-oh. That might be the part that we can't remember.
Digital or analog?
I'll try.
Simple question. Definitely analog. Analog. Limited tracks.
And y'all had Atari NA back then?
Yep, yeah. MTR 90.
Yep. I believe there's one here at the school.
Is it the one from
we
there?
actually,
no, it is not the one.
No, they rented one. Remember, they had one trucked
they
in
rented
from Nashville.
a second one.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Did you never synced the two of them? Did you do 48 or one?
No.
It all stayed on 24 tracks.
Yeah.
And when you start thinking about it, it was quite brilliant because, I mean, that really led to engineering a record.
Yes.
And again,
tracks were expensive. You didn't just use them for anything.
Back when a plug-in was just electricity.
Right.
So,
that's a great way of putting that. Yeah. Never really thought of it that way, but sincerely, I mean, nowadays when we think about tracks, it costs what? Nothing really. If you've got the program, you I want to add a track, and off we go. But back then you had to make room for certain things. We were talking about this before coming up here.
Right.
Sometimes, some people call it backward masking and stuff of that nature. We basically were, I think I can say this pretty honestly, that Sterling and I were responsible for late night hours of figuring out how you're going to take a whatever it might be. It might be a guitar part or something of that nature, and create a backwards effect for that guitar. All right, all to say, not to be overly technical about this, but that required time and really thinking through what you were going to do, because
It takes like 2 seconds now
Yeah.
instead of 2 hours.
and without fear that you're going to lose something in the process.
There's no undo in that world, you know. You really got to make a decision, you know, and stick with it. So yeah, not an easy task.
Sorry about that tangent, you guys, but
No,
I'm still
that's-
reliving some of this sometimes when I think about it. Wow.
There's going to be technical stuff when you get 3 engineers together, right?
Oh yeah,
Yes.
oh yeah. We're
This is
gonna nerd
important.
out. We're gonna nerd out.
So I guess, y'all didn't cut any drum tracks. It was all the overdubs and
No,
vocals?
it was what all the vocals were done there.
All vocals
Almost
were
all
done
the
there.
vocals
I would say a lot of guitar parts.
All the leads were done there.
Yep.
Some rhythm stuff was punched in and added, and a couple of bass things were punched in, but all the bass tracks were already done. So all the drums, bass, and most of the rhythm guitars were all done by the time they got to us.
So to do that process in the mix, how long were y'all working on it?
5 months, 6 months.
Well, before it was all said and done, 7.
Yeah. We took a break or two in there for Thanksgiving and Christmas, so and New Year's.
And I got to tell you, there's nothing like having Christmas with Pantera. Yeah. There's just not. I mean,
Outrageous.
outrageous.
Yeah.
Well, hopefully we'll get some of those stories for the day's over.
Yeah. Yeah, man.
Strength beyond strength. Anything particular come to mind about that before we play it? To listen for, or?
Trying to ruin the song in my
Well,
head,
let's
but
play this song and
play
maybe
it.
it'll
Maybe
bring
it'll
something.
spark something. I don't know. We'll see.
There's nothing, no education, no family life. To all of us, you'll say, I just today, get gone tomorrow, be broken up gutter. I know the opinion, a broken record. Fuck you and your college stream, actors were stronger than all. You're working for perfect price, perfect class, perfect name, and some healthy. To legalize dumping up risky streets, I'm making a fortune. Your muscle is gone, not even gross. I'm full-bred cop, dig down stronger than all.
That's good. Yeah, we're not going to play all the way through 'em,
Yeah, I mean, that's kind of weird.
but that one is the most thrash.
It's very thrash.
It's very thrash.
The one thing that that really stands out to me about that song was the night that they were in there recording Dime's solo parts, and it was this big layered thing, and he always went for these really wacky, weird tones, I guess you want to call them, that you couldn't reproduce in a million years in a live setting or any other way. And that whole breakdown lead section was comprised of like 5 or 6 different guitars and different things, and he had this whole signal chain going through an amp, and it was driving off of 5 or 6 different foot pedals, and it was buzzing like crazy. And I remember me and Tim both were headed in there, and as we were headed into the control room there in Studio A, Dime goes, "Stop, don't move. We just got this thing to be about as quiet as it's gonna get, and if you step up here, it's gonna start buzzing again. Don't come in here right now." And he's like, "Terry, roll it." And he rolled it, and he laid it down, and he was like, "All right, y'all can come in now." So I remember that part. So, but yeah, that was I mean, it was always something with him. He was always going for some kind of tone that you couldn't, I don't know if it was that you couldn't reproduce it, or I think he was just trying to be unique, different, you know, brazen, whatever you want
Well,
to
he
call
definitely
it.
came up with some tones that
Dude.
are,
Yeah.
out of sight, man.
He
It's
was a
crazy.
definite tone maestro.
One thing I noticed about that one right off the bat is like how freaking tight they pumped.
Oh, yeah.
You know, even on that thrash stuff, it's not, it's got a beat, it's got a groove.
Yeah.
The
They
thing that
were amazingly tied together.
the thing that a lot of people don't realize is that a lot of that was, I can't say one takes, but definitely didn't take necessarily long periods of time for that to come together.
Right.
And that gave me like this huge appreciation for the musicianship of not only the brothers, but the band as a
Oh,
whole.
yeah.
I mean, it's just incredible. If you were to take the multi-tracks and break them down, you go, well,
I have.
right.
did you guys punch this stuff in and so on and so forth? And in a lot of cases, it was simply that good.
Well,
They
yeah,
were that good.
I was saving that for later. I was going to talk about it. When I got the opportunity to sit and play with the multi-tracks, 5 Minutes Long is my favorite Pantera song, and I did a mix of that just for me. No one will ever hear it, don't worry. But listening to how tight Dime was with himself when he did doubles
He was
was
meticulous about
phenomenal.
that.
I mean, those squeals, those harmonics, they weren't just similar, they were identical. They were just the timing and everything was
That
so
was so
nice.
much done on purpose because he was very aware of the fact that he was the only guitar player in the band, yet he wanted this huge sound, and it had to be tight so that it didn't sound like 2 or 3 or 4 guys for the most part on all of his rhythm tracks. And like he said, when they would do these initial takes and run-throughs, I went on to work with him for many years after Far Beyond Driven, and sitting there and watching this process year after year in the studio, it became this whole thing of they would write in the studio, the demos would actually become the album, and they, like Tim said, very little tightening up happened after they got the initial track done and constructed. And it would be like, here's this main pass of him, and then he would tweak that track just a little bit more to tighten it up, and then come back over the top of that with a double and tighten that up. But he was meticulous, and he was on it.
Well, it shows, and I mean, it sounds like a lot of
Yeah.
that stuff was just, it sounds like one tape.
Yeah.
And even the ones he may have punched in a couple of things. It was really amazing.
Mm-hmm.
I had a whole new appreciation for just how tight they were and how good he was.
Yep. He
at
was
doubling
amazing to
himself and
watch.
everything.
Amazing. And then one minute it would be that guy, and the next minute it would be he'd play some silly riff, or we'd drink a shot or whatever. It was that. So yeah, amazing.
I remember him ripping the pockets off of my shirt. That's what I remember.
Sounds just like him.
Oh yeah. Or setting something on fire,
Brand-
or setting
brand
off a
new shirt.
firecracker or something.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Yeah. Firecracker ripping. I'll get you another one. Don't worry about it.
Don't worry about it.
Well, the next song on the record is Becoming. First album with a whammy pedal too, right?
That I know of. Yeah.
A long time ago, I never knew myself. And I'm never real ashamed, but it's scared.
Did you do the drop? The 808 drop?
Go ahead and
They
fade it
use
down.
that boomy thing.
Boomy
'Cause
thing.
you got to remember, this is 1993, 94, so know the vernacular. But Tim was like, "Oh yeah, I got all that stuff," and you broke out that sampler. And
Yeah, the old S900.
Uh-huh.
We got one of those.
Mhm.
We'll make that work.
So yeah, that big boom in the chorus there, and then
Once again, that was part of the rest of
You
what was going on.
you were on the same page. You were drinking the same beer and the same whiskey. You were matching them shot for shot. You were part of the family. Period. That was the way they rolled, and that was the way they did things. And yeah, this is the way it was.
That was new for me.
Same here. I was young. I was, 23, 24. So now I'm 107
Yeah.
in
engineer
in
years.
touring years. But yeah, man, it was great. It was time of our lives. I mean, do you remember anything specific about that song other than that? I remember hearing that thing first and going, "What the hell is that?" Because I'd never heard of a whammy pedal.
Yeah, I mean, I've got all kinds of stories talking about, should we keep that noise? Should we not keep that noise? What is good noise? What is not good noise?
We learned a lot from Terry on that about noise is your
man.
friend, right?
Oh yeah.
That whole noise is your friend conversation.
And guys, you gotta think about it like this. Prior to getting into the quote unquote metal world, my background was pop, believe it or not. So when something was asked to be cleaned up, that meant clean that stuff up.
Yeah, you were doing a lot of Christian sessions about that same time, weren't you? Don't.
No comment.
That's a whole other story. But about as far as that song goes, yeah, that was my introduction to what's a whammy pedal, and he did the 808 drop, and I don't know. That's about all I remember of that one.
Once again, I just remember how
and
tight.
Phil.
Just the heaviness of
Yeah.
this track.
Oh, yeah.
Just such a heavy groove.
I remember what. No, it wasn't that song either. Never mind. So it's all starting to come back. It comes back in pieces. So, but yeah, that one. I mean,
has
that
been
was
a
pretty
few
much done.
years.
Yeah, it's been a couple of years, man. God, how long? 30 years,
Close to it.
dude.
Yeah, when was this? 92?
93. 93. End of 93, on into 94, and then I ended up going out with him on the road as Rex's bass tech, and that was just one of those child runs away with circus moments for me,
Yeah, but how many years?
Well,
10?
from there on, yeah. So from 94 through 01.
01. Okay.
01, and then we did Damage Plan, and then after that, Hell Yeah, and all that stuff. So, yeah,
Cool.
I was with him a long time.
Quite a while.
Well, the next one is my favorite Pantera song. 5 Minutes Alone, and we're going to listen to all of 5 Minutes Alone.
Do we,
So
do
there's
we
not
gotta?
really room for a mosh pit, but if you want to, like what Eric Clapton said at the time, if you want to jangle your jewelry.
Jangle your jewelry.
So here's 5 Minutes Alone. So heavy. Just such a deep, deep groove on this. Is it just right and left guitar tracks, or is there a center track too? It's just the left and right, right? I gotta be honest, for years I thought it was 5 Minutes of Love.
But I got a funny story about that. Go ahead, cut it. So
Pause it there, because we're gonna hear that solo, damn it.
well, he did that solo there too in Studio A. But I remember there was a point in time where we're almost done with the album. We're into the mixing process, and of course, back in that day, the record labels were really involved in the process, I guess you could say.
To say the least.
They didn't have any purview over the material itself because they allowed them artistic freedom at that point in time, but they would have to fly them in so they could hear the music and make them happy. That's something they could go home and brag about. I don't know. I never understood record labels, but it's that corporate mentality. But they flew them in or whatever, and they had talked to one of them, and they had already sent somebody some demos to New York or something. And he goes, and they were like, "Well, what's your favorite track?" And he said, 5 Minutes of Love, man. I love that song.
I'll make
Go.
a
Let's
comment
finish
after
it.
we hear that.
Go.
Let's finish it.
You took me for a fool. You used complexion on my skin for counter racist tool. You can't burn me. I'll spill my guts out in the path, drinking advantage of. 'Cause you know where I come from. My past. You've waged a war of nerves, but you can't cross the kingdom. Can't be what your idols are. Can't lead that sky. I'll bury your compensation. I ask you please just give us.
Such a strut in that groove, man. It's just,
Vinnie Paul. Straight up Vinnie Paul.
5 minutes of love.
what a riff.
Headbutts of broken glass.
And then he throws that groove.
They were just the masters of this
Yeah.
groove metal. It
Just come on.
And ask if having automation even turned on would make a sonic difference.
right, just the signal passing through it.
You're freaking having me call this guy
Yeah.
to ask this question. Do you know who that is? And it's like, just go call him, tell him who you're with, tell him what you're up to. He's going to answer the question. And I did, and came back and I said, he says to turn it off.
Yep.
And so, I mean, that led to weeks and weeks of mixing.
Well, that's how we used to have to. You would assign everybody a job. Okay, and the chorus is you take this fader and go to this
Yeah.
mark, and then after the chorus you put it back, and you come over here and you mute.
It was a performance.
It was like it literally was.
Yeah.
You know. It's,
Roy Thomas
and-
Baker with Queen.
That's
Yeah.
a real good way of
Absolutely.
putting it. Thank you for saying that, because quite literally when we were in mix mode with a lot of this, and I don't know if you remember this, but kind of my role was tape op.
Yeah.
If you want to think of it that way.
Yeah.
So I sat in the back with a
The remote keyboard.
with the remote keyboard.
And we trade off every now and then.
Sure.
And then you'd operate the half-inch machine,
Yep.
the half-inch tape machine, and that's what we would mix down to. You know? Dude.
It was, in its own way, it was orchestrated in the control
Did you
room.
end up doing a lot of splicing?
Not on this album.
Because I used to have to do that a lot sometimes if I was mixing something totally by myself in those situations.
Lars Ulrich, that's
Or
a
you
different conversation.
Oh, he went there. Whoa, easy now.
Yeah, I went there. He's a dick.
I'm shocked that you would never.
So that's a
everybody, you know,
whole
anyway.
different conversation that he and I encountered.
I went there. Hey,
And
you, for 3
I
days.
have
Hey, you.
pictures of that. Now that was hell.
That
is
was
what
that was before Pantera. That was the project before.
right before.
Right before it. But anyways, we digress. Anyways, yeah, it was it was definitely performance based. You know, I mean, we did do some automation for some things that just like that mute. I was talking about, hey, I did that mute right there on that guitar solo on that delay at the end. You know, there was some automation incorporated into it, but for the most part, it was.
I
got to
be honest, I don't remember that. Yeah. All I remember is making that phone call and going, he says turn it off.
Right.
Okay.
But I mean, it was, yeah, there was a lot of, hey, you get this 8 channels, you get that 8 channels, I got the middle, you know.
Yeah.
It was that. I'm steering the ship, you two handle those oars.
I understand.
Yep.
Yeah, it's like I often used to have to, like set it up for the verse, then record the verse, and then stop, set it up for the chorus when I was by myself and I just couldn't get to everything.
And then splice it all
then
together.
You would just, then you'd have to cut it back together, and then you keep going forever.
I think that probably happened for us, especially on Far Beyond Driven. We did many reels of mixtapes.
Yeah.
Different versions of them.
Yep.
Want the guitars up a little bit here.
And I continued to do that for years after. I mean, just for Reinventing the Steel, we had 45 or 50 rolls of half-inch tape because each song we'd do 10 versions of it.
Did you find that you really couldn't tell the versions apart when you went back a month?
No, you can tell them apart because when they wanted me, they made sure before we even we're done with the song. This is going to be our master mix. But when I did something, it was very specific. It was like, when I say guitars up, I want you to move the VCA for the guitars, the group for the guitars up this far.
Right.
I had marks all over the console. And yeah, you could hear it. It was the definite difference. And if we got into mastering, we had all these different versions, and it was like, that part just sounds like the guitars are buried right there. Well, then we'd splice it together with that version and then come out of that or whatever. And so we had all that, and because it was digital at that point in the mastering world.
Right.
So yeah, we would, yeah.
So that brings me to the question back to you. Is that what you were talking about as far as having to splice stuff together, or were you talking about actually splicing the multi-tracks together?
Not the multi. I was talking about just in mixing.
We did one splice for Vinny on that whole project. And I remember him asking, "Hey, either one of you know how to splice tape?" Because it was a little lope in there that he didn't want in there. It was a little slow getting back to the downbeat, and he had him. I can't remember what song it was. Do you?
I don't.
And it was
take
just
out like an 1/8 of an inch of tape.
It literally, this much tape rolling at 30 inches
About
per
the
second.
size of your small finger.
Exactly, and he asked if either one of us knew how to do that, and me and him just busted out laughing because we had already been through that whole Lars Ulrich thing, like a month before.
Yeah.
And he did it in like 2 minutes, and it was done. And Vinny goes, "Wow, that was perfect, dude. Thanks." And it was done. Moved on to the next problem.
Cool. Well, another one of the really big popular songs off this is "I'm Broken," which is coming up next. So let's listen to a little "I'm Broken." That deep freaking groove again within 2 beats.
Yep.
And Vinny's snare placement in the pocket is just perfect too.
Yep.
Just that was what it should be. And there's just something about their grooves like that just nobody else did or does. I mean, it's just the unusual, not just straight ahead stuff, but There's always a push and a pull and just really something else. Yeah, go ahead and fade it down.
You remarked back your way about you talking about their groove and the push and the pull. They never did anything with a click, ever. You think they did, but they did not. Benny was he was a machine, and there was a very rare time when things were done with a click, but it was a sequence that maybe Dime made on a drum machine up in his own home studio, and he did a riff to, and then they would play to that. They would get the tempo for that, and then just go from there. Their tempo was the two of them playing together. That was their tempo. That was their click and their clock. And that's how they did things from day one. And if something was weird and we or if we even managed to splice something together from something like that, it was they could play the same song 2-3 times and it would be a couple of different tempos. But we would always it was a we didn't get that part right, let's play it again. And then they would start from the top and they would go. And they would piece it together, they'd keep it in their heads. They were very much in the moment when they were in the studio. It was a very organic process from start to finish with those guys always.
That's a good word for it.
Yeah, it was totally organic. They weren't even playing to a click or nothing, just off of each other.
And quite honestly, I think that's why there is such feel there, as opposed to sticking rigid to a click. I think there's a lot to be said for that.
That is the sound of people gelling.
Yeah.
It is exactly what that is.
And the push and the pull, something that maybe a lot of people don't necessarily think about. A lot of times with musicians, of course, having that visual and just kind of knowing what the other guy's going to be doing. A lot of times, I guess for overdubs and stuff like that, we didn't have the luxury of having them together. But I can almost guarantee you that when the initial rhythm tracks were being tracked, they were doing that together as a whole.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. Oh, definitely. Always. I remember after they didn't do it with this one. They would all go out and wear headphones at their dad's studio, or where, like before that was Vulgar, and that was at their dad's studio here, which was Pantego back in the day, Pantego Sound. But after that, when they finally built their own studio down at Dimes, the Chase and Jason, they rented a whole bunch of Showco gear, floor wedges and a monitor console, and that's how they would all sit out in the room together. And so that's one of the reasons that album sounds so raw and nasty and mean, is that it was a band in a rehearsal space in a studio with all the speakers blaring in the room, flying into the drum mics, everything. That's why that album sounds that way.
And there's a lot to be said for that, because I remember quite a few years ago now, doing some stuff with a band called Element 80.
I remember them.
And we were recording some new songs, and they would not all come to the studio at the same time.
They have
The bass player wanted
beef
to
with
come
one
in.
another
Yeah,
or
they
something?
I tried, man, let's get you all together, because it's just, that's how we'll get the feel. That's how it'll sound. No, man, nobody does that anymore. They were like laughing at me because I wanted them to all play at one time. There is still a magic there when you have musicians interacting with each other.
Absolutely.
Not just remembering and repeating their parts, but playing their parts together.
I mentioned the whole thing about they were very present, and that's part of it too, being in the moment. You're not sitting there thinking about something else. You're in your zone, and then you're in that zone with everyone else. It's so important.
And it was really amazing how fast those 7 months passed.
Oh, yeah.
When we were all together. I think that there's something to be said with, I guess I'll call it being on a team, striving for the same goals. like Sterling said, being present, being there in the moment. I can't say that we had that luxury of having, Rex and Phil there for a good portion of the time, but the one driving force that was there were the two brothers.
Well, yeah.
The brothers, they were the heart and soul of that band. Anybody that says any different just doesn't know. It's just ignorance.
Well, yeah.
Yeah, they don't know. They weren't there, but they were the heart and soul of that whole band. They wrote all the music. That's just the way that was, and I'm not being, what's the word I'm looking for? I'm not being mean. I'm stating facts here. That was the fact. And even after that whole thing was done and we moved on to do several other albums together, the one constant was Dime and Vinny, constantly there, hour after hour after hour after
Oh,
day
sure.
after month after year. And I'm sitting right there with them. That was the constant, was those two. So
Always. Yeah.
that was it.
Yeah, like I've always thought my ideal recording situation would be to take a band, a mobile truck or something, go out in the country somewhere where there's a barn, and you're locked away from everybody, and all you can do is, like, again, that mentality of, going to war together, being a team together.
Absolutely.
Can make such a big difference.
Absolutely. No, it does. Absolutely does. So, yeah, man. I don't know. I don't remember anything specific about that song, honestly.
Well, this is the one song where, again, we never got to that part, but at the end of one of the parts there was this sound that happened at the end of, I want to say it was at the end of the lead. Not real sure, but it was the sweeping sound that was low indie, and I was so proud of the fact that it took us several times to get the perfect one there.
Where he's like diving. He
Yes.
does the dive
Yeah.
bomb. Yeah, and that. Yeah, I remember that.
So for what I'm talking about, guys, you'd have to listen very carefully to hear it, but it is.
It's in there.
It's definitely there.
Yeah.
That was one of my really proud moments because we worked on that until we got the perfect one. And then once it was there, it was like, for God's sake, whatever you do, don't touch that.
Yeah. You couldn't sit that on a. Well, I'm gonna put this in another playlist and all. No, there was no playlist. There was no undo.
Well, yeah, you used to have to stick things between the lines in the vocal if you are
Sometimes,
between the verse
yeah.
and the chorus.
Oh, we were
or-
stacking tracks like madmen on that album, man. There's only 23 tracks available because you had to have one for time code if you wanted
Right.
to do any automation. And so, and we were, can we fit this one guitar part in here? Because he doesn't hit any toms from 232 to 434. So, we can squeeze it in there and we'll just double patch it over here. Yeah, man, a lot of work went into that stuff.
Well, have you ever gotten the multi-tracks to a Bohemian Rhapsody that, are going around?
Oh, yeah, I've seen them.
I took and broke those 24 tracks to where
Split 'em
everybody
apart.
got their own part, like we would do it.
How many tracks did you end up with?
51.
Okay. I believe it.
Because
I
you have
believe it.
tracks where it's drums, a snare overdub or something from, and then the guitar solo, and then background vocals, and then percussion at the end,
Yeah.
and, all on one track.
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
nothing for me now to get like 20 tracks from a band or 20, 30 tracks or whatever, and by the time I'm done with it, it's 120.
Yeah.
Easily. So that's a common occurrence now.
The last song, the last Rigor Mortis album was 126 tracks, that
Yeah.
long medley.
Yeah, man, it's crazy.
Okay, the next song we're not going to listen to.
Ah,
Sorry, boys and girls, but we might have boys and girls want to watch this someday.
It's a
And
family event.
Good Friends and Bottle of Pills.
My. Scariest song on the record as far as I'm concerned.
We're not going to play that one. We want to be able to get on YouTube and stuff.
That's one of the two songs that the vocals were already done
Oh, yeah.
by the time it got to us, and it was, in fact, we did nothing on that song.
Yep.
It was done, and they were just messing around in the studio. They had a few drinks, and they just told Terry to roll tape, and they were just messing around. And that was one take, and then Dime came back and did one more double guitar where that happens, and that's it. They recorded that song in literally however long it is. It's like 4.5 minutes or 4 minutes. or
Probably has
whatever.
not gotten a lot of radio play.
No, no. I do believe it was in a couple of Disney movies, but
Like I said, the
other than
scariest
that, no.
song on the album, as far as I'm concerned.
no, it was off the top of their heads. Phil never even had any lyrics written down, and he wrote everything down.
Yeah.
And he didn't have anything written for that one. He just went off the top of his head that night.
Well, let's see. The one after that, and the end of side one on the vinyl version is Hardline Sunken Cheeks.
That one was fun. That was fun. That was a great one. That was one of my. That's one of my happy places I go back to every now and then when I'm thinking about those two guys. Is that us all working on that song together? Me and Tim and Terry and Dime and Vinny being in the room together, working on that. That was just fun. The solo and the end of the solo with his Space Echo and all of
Space
that.
Echo. So, Space Echo that he's talking about, you got a story about all of that too.
Well, they were all going out to eat. He had brought it in, and listen, Dime spoke differently. He spoke a different language. If you knew much about him, yeah.
Hang on.
Dime
What was the
Bonics.
name? What was the name that we? What was it? Dime Bonics.
Dime Bonics is what we came up with.
Dime Bonics.
But somebody out here said it, and it was. It took me a good solid 3 weeks to a month to just understand him, because he spoke such a different language. And one day he comes in, and that's what they were going to work on was the end of Hardline and Sunken Cheeks. And so he hands it to Tim. You know, it's a big box. If you've ever seen one, it's a Roland 201 Space Echo. Now they cost, I think when you bought one brand new back in the day, it was what, $500?
If that.
I don't think they were
400
that much.
because it was a tape echo.
It was the
It
mid
was-
'60s when they came out.
Yeah, so maybe it was less than that, $200 or something.
Yeah.
And now they go for like $2,000-$3,000. They're vintage gear, and everybody wants one. And there's only certain sounds that you can get out of this thing that you cannot get out of any other piece of gear on the planet. And it's because it's a delay tape machine in a box. And so he hands it to Tim, and he goes, "All right, man, we're going to go out and grab something to eat real quick. We're going to be right back. I'll just clean this up real quick, all right?" And what we didn't know was that Dime meant just hook it up. Just take it in the studio and hook it up.
Clean it up meant hook it up.
Hook it, make it work.
Get me ready to go, so that when
Turn
we
it
get back,
on.
we can just dive in and go.
Turn it on, go. That's what he meant. But what we heard was clean it up. So we take the
So
lid
it was
off of it.
shiny and
Tim gets in there. He pulls the tape loop out. He measures it all out. He puts a brand new piece of tape in the cartridge, puts it all back on there, and gets back, and he goes, "Oh, hey, man, did you get that thing cleaned up for me?" And he's like, "Yeah, here it is, man." And it was all cleaned up. It had all the stuff wiped off of it. It was no fingerprints, nothing. And he's like, "What the hell?" And he goes, "Please tell me you didn't throw away the tape loop that was in there." And he was like, "Yeah, no, we got it right in here." And he goes, "What I meant was just go hook it up and make it work. That's all I meant. Sorry." And so, it was a learning moment, as we were saying earlier. It's a learning moment. And so he put the original tape loop back into the cartridge, and then what happened that night after many consumed alcoholic adult beverages was the end of the lead for Hardlines and Sunken Cheeks. We just routed the signal off of the console into the Space Echo and recorded that back to a track of the 2-inch tape, and it's that weird all that crazy
what you
swooshy
could
stuff.
do moving the slider, moving the
Exactly.
head on those.
Exactly.
You could get some sounds you can't get.
And it happened one time and one time only. And Dime was the one sitting there doing the knobs and the slider and everything on the Space Echo, and we were like so happy, and it sounded so cool, and we were like, yeah, we were like literally screaming and yelling in the studio. It was awesome.
fun.
We had a blast. So yeah.
Well, yeah, you don't run across this. It's like I was working with an artist one time in Austin, and he made some little squawky guitar noise, right? Well, he loved the way he did it the first time, and he couldn't match it the other 2 times
Exactly.
or 3.
Always press
So-
record.
Always
Well, they were
record.
recorded, but we didn't have samplers and
You couldn't move it.
editing. And he take that first one and put it on the other 3 places. Well, nowadays that takes you 5 seconds.
Right.
It was probably at least an hour and a half because you have to mark the tape.
Yeah.
And then try to hit it on a certain beat, and then, okay, it's early, remark it, wind everybody back, try it again. Oh, now it's late, somewhere in
Yeah.
between.
A lot of now, kids. There used to be this thing called rewind. Yep, we used to have to wait on that. That was, if I had to count up, you and me had to count up all the time we had to wait on rewind.
Oh, my gosh, yes.
We would be at least 10 years younger,
Probably.
maybe. So but
Maybe
yeah,
that's why records took so long to make back then.
rewind. But now, man, that was a good one. That was a good night. I remember that fondly.
Let's listen to it.
Oh, I remember another thing about this song. The Moog Taurus pedals.
Oh,
Right there.
yeah.
Yeah.
Who was playing them?
Rex. And you have to stop and tune them because they drift out of tune. They're the old Moogs, you know, analog synthesizer.
Yeah.
Boom.
Some of those old things, the voltage drop or something,
Yeah.
and everything could throw them off.
Well, yeah, if it's old and the voltage regulator or whatever in it is old, it drifts.
Yeah.
And as it warms up, it goes sharp. So you have to tune, and you had a little tuner knob, and you'd have to tune it back down. So yeah, we had it hooked up to a Korg tuner. And that right there. We hooked up a U87, and Phil was running around out in Studio A, way far away from the U87, and we were just capturing the room. That's what that is, those vocals.
I always love the sound of that room.
Great rig, great room.
Turn on a dime. No pun intended.
Literally. Go ahead and cut it. So he cut it.
Go ahead and fade out.
Anything with headphones, he hated it. And he would always track vocals with a 58
It's
in
a
the
58.
control room, and the speakers were like Yamaha NS10Ms.
I think he still does.
Yeah. So, yeah, exactly. And that was one of the rare times that I ever saw him put on a pair of headphones. Number
So did you
one
flip
album.
the speakers out of phase or
No,
anything? That's
no,
one of the
no.
tricks we used to have to do that when you had to
He would be
have
off to the
somebody sing to a
side.
speaker.
He would be off to the side, and it would just be blazing hot, loud in there, and him and Terry in there, and I guess he would be off axis from in some form or fashion, and he would just be screaming into a 58, and yeah.
Yeah, we weren't really privy to doing too many vocals.
No,
we
that
were
was all Terry.
politely asked to,
Yeah, go find
Just
something to
needs-
do. And so I'd go off with Dime. Dime would grab me, and we'd go tear something up in the warehouse or something, or break something, whatever. We'd find something to do, and yeah, or me and him would clean something or whatever. I don't know, but Yeah, like all the
You
vocal
mean
sessions,
clean it, or do you
like
mean-
the end of the from the previous album, Vulgar, the end of Hostile was the mic feeding back into the NS10s in the control
Well,
room there.
let's see if anybody else out here has any questions. I'm hoping someone has something they want to ask.
My name is
I see a
Sterling.
guy right now.
I'm a Capricorn. I
I
like
see a
long
guy
walks on the
that,
beach.
that has a question. I can tell he has a question. Who has a question?
Right on. All right.
What's your name?
John.
Where are you from?
I literally work here.
Okay.
But my question is, what was the weirdest sound that Dime layered in to his guitar tone?
That's a great question.
With
At the time, the whammy might have
just
been.
within Far Beyond Driven, or okay, just within Far Beyond Driven. I would say that weird setup he did for Strength, that lead thing, because it was a lot. It was like he had this whole elaborate setup going to this little bitty. I don't know if you've ever seen them, but it's the little mini Marshall cabinets, and they were like, you know, it looked like a mini Marshall cabinet. It was all covered in Tolex and everything, and it was like, I don't even remember. There were some pedals in there I didn't even recognize. I don't even know, but that for that particular album, I think that was the weirdest thing. That and the whammy. I'd never seen a whammy pedal before.
And he was never afraid to experiment with some of the craziest configurations. Logically thinking through, it's like, that's never going to work.
That's not going to work, but you have to, working with artists, you have to throw that out the window. You have to say, you can't think logically, because artists don't think logically. They don't think inside the box. They don't think about boundaries and restrictions and things like that, or otherwise all art would be a dull, khaki kind of thing, you know what I mean? So, yeah.
I think there's something to be said for that as well. You know, for anybody who's thinking about being a recording engineer, that's a rarity these days. We've got people who are aspiring to be producers. I'm a producer. Well, you know, how I was brought up, you've got to be a really good producer, in my opinion, is you really kind of know, engineers make really good producers because they understand the logistics of things. But one of the things that I definitely learned on this record is to always have an open mind and never say that can't be done.
Please don't.
Don't ever say that.
Don't say the word no in the studio if you can help it, you know? Let them do what they're going to do. Let them be themselves. That has guided me through most of my career, is please let the band be themselves. Don't make it sound like you. It's not your music, it's their music.
Exactly.
So that's kind of where I'm at with that. But weird sounds, man, he was full of them. Even going beyond, Far Beyond Driven was just, he was always coming up with something bizarre and weird. And I want to put Mike in the bathroom, and then we're going to use that weird tile sound, because that's what reverb chambers were back in the day, was a tile room that they shot a speaker in, you know, and then you had a mic in there, and that was the return to the console. That was how you did reverb. You know, so there's, you know, he even into like Damage Plan. Some of the last stuff I recorded with him was you see those little pedal boards that have a gazillion presets in them, the little digital pedal boards. Well, he'd string 3 of those together, 3 different brands, one going into the next, and you get a sound that I could never reproduce ever. Like on the song Blink of an Eye on the Damage Plan album. That was a weird ass 3 of those digital foot pedals on the floor in a row. I couldn't tell you what kind they were, and that's what ended up on the album, you know? So yeah, man. That's all I got.
Anybody else have anything they'd like to ask? There's a gentleman right over here.
He seems to have an affinity for the Dallas Cowboys.
Yes. And I wonder how the game's going. But anyway.
So
What's your name?
my name is Josh.
Hi, Josh.
Nice to meet you. My question is, I heard it from a fan, not a producer, an engineer, but I was always wanted to ask this question, and it goes kind of somewhere to maybe, all the weird stuff that Dime did. Was one of those things that he would do was tune his guitars so many cents sharp or flat or something just to get that certain tone?
There was I went on the road and I was a tech, and I ended up doing a lot of stuff with him guitar wise when his tech wasn't around, Grady Champion. But where we tuned on the road and in the studio was, okay, you got the Korg tuners and you got the little Cylon thing that goes back and forth and it sits right in the middle. That's straight up 440, or that's wherever you're tuned at on their tuner, that's where you're supposed to go. But what they figured out on their own, him and Grady, Dime and Grady, was that if they tuned everything to not 440, but we would tune everything to 438. We'd go click down 2 cents? 2 cents to 438, settled, best. There was a lot of time that went into, well, it goes out of tune when I do this. It goes out of tune when I do this. It goes out of tune when I do this. Literally. If you're going to, and when he tracked guitars in the studio, he did it standing up. And he always told the magazines, you don't go to war sitting down. But the main thing was that it settled different. The springs, this thing's floating on a set of springs in the back and the 2 posts that are right there to hold it, the fulcrum. And so you lean forward just a little bit or backwards just a little bit, it goes sharp and flat, depending on where you're at. And if you sit down, it sounds different. That's how meticulous he was in the studio, period. And so, yeah, there was a lot of stuff that went into us getting that, and there was a lot of research that him and Grady did with the tuning and where does it settle. Yeah, it's an amazing amount of time of my life that I'll never get back of tuning, and that's where it settled, and that's where it performed best. So, yeah, you heard right. State your name for the record, sir.
Chris. Okay, I just wondering.
Why were you driving that fast in the school zone, Mr. Corley?
Because I drive a Mustang. Anyway, I was wondering, on that particular album, was he mainly using the Century 200 head instead of what he was using prior?
He was using what was in his live rig, which we had pictures of it, but it was just the RG100.
Well, it's like when people get gear slutty with me
Dude.
about stuff. I go, man,
Doesn't matter.
I've used the best I have, but if I got 57s and 58s to record a record, I'll record the record.
You want to get in an argument with me about gear, I'm not going to care. Are your songs worth a crap? That's what I care about,
Hi, Spuds. I'm Spuds.
Hi, Spuds.
Pleasure. I actually have a question for both of you. It has nothing to do with this album. It has to do as far as in the studio gear. If you could have only one overdrive pedal to put in front of any amp for any type of band, what would your choice be?
Dude, I'm not that guy.
I don't know that I am either.
Okay, here's where again, what I was just saying about gear. It ain't the gear, it's the ear. I look at it like this. When I tell people your source has to be the most important thing in the chain. And when I say source, I'm not talking about the instrument, I'm not talking about the microphone, I'm talking about the musician, the artist. They are the source. And I mean, look, you could give me a box that has 20 different pedals on it, and I'm going to pick the one that goes best with that song. And so if I don't have any tuner and a couple of distortion boxes like you're talking, and it's going straight into a Marshall, that's the guy you're going to want to record with, because he knows what he's doing with these and with his heart. That's where it's at for me. So, I don't know. You're welcome.
Anyone else?
Great crowd.
Well,
Great crowd.
thanks, guys. Let's give the guys a hand. This has been really interesting listening to. I've enjoyed the heck out of it. Well, that is the end of side A, and we're gonna wrap up this show here. Thanks, guys. This has been really interesting.
You're welcome.
It's good to get to
I got a bunch of
visit with
stories
y'all
that I
like
can't
that.
probably repeat here.
Well, I'm
but,
sure you
know,
do. But this has been really cool. It's really great.
Well, thank you for
Thanks for
allowing us to get to
Yeah.
share
Sure. Well,
some of this.
Thanks
Here
for
we are.
having
we
us.
still got
man.
the
How many years
B-side
later
to
are
go.
we now?
Yeah. Glad to be here.
30 years.
Yeah.
I know. It's like
Wow.
when I think about how long ago the Rigor Mortis record was there at
Yeah.
Sound Lab, it's like, I can't believe it's 30.
I got to assist you on that one.
Russell told me that they were skating out in the warehouse and they threw a skateboard through the wall or something.
None of them skateboarded.
So, I don't know. Something Russell
Some
told me
friend
years
may
ago.
have. Well, thank you everyone for coming today, and we're going to end side one here, and this will be posted real soon, and hope everyone enjoys watching it later on. And thank you for episode
Yeah, thank you
A
guys
of,
for coming out.
Talking
Wow.
Pantera.
Thanks
You know,
for being here.
I'll be one that absolutely recognizes the fact that it takes some effort to come to a place to listen to some guys talk about, a really cool record and everything. Thank y'all for coming.
Absolutely. All right. Thank you, guys. Why don't you play 5 minutes long one more time as we go out?
Someone to see